Welcome to the Contagious Code podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome. I am Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Vercel, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today, my guest is Taylor Desseyn, the greatest technical recruiter in the industry by a mile. What makes Taylor really great is that he is a recruiter, but without being annoying to engineers. For those of you who are engineers or who have been an engineer for a while, software engineers specifically, you may have had, a bunch of recruiter spam to deal with. People on LinkedIn saying, hi, I hope you're well. Usually starting it with that and then giving you a copy paste something I have a job for you, which on the one hand is a huge position of privilege. I do want to acknowledge that, but at the same time is not a very human experience, and it's almost like this person's out to get me hired, which is actually a good thing, but then there's something in it for them, and so it's not really organic in a way. And while recruiters are awesome, I think unsolicited recruiters are kind of a problem in software engineering circles, particularly perhaps if you're more visible or something through open source contributions. In any case, Taylor is not that. Taylor is a recruiter by background who understands the human side of relationships and connections. He is loved by developers, has given talks at technical conferences, and is somebody who really knows how to toe the line on authentic and genuine relationships to get people happy, to get developers the jobs that they want by being a recruiter, and to honestly get himself positioned where he needs to be. He leads community efforts and recruiting around Torque.dev, which is a platform for devs to find jobs. If you want to find a job, actually go to Torque.dev, and there's links in the show notes for that. But in our discussion today, Taylor teaches us how to form genuine relationships as he has from being a recruiter with developers to just building a really powerful network. Indeed, multiple times in our episode, Taylor says this really great quote. He says, "Your network is your net worth. Your net worth is not really money or assets, but is really who you know," right? And this tracks with other wisdom, like show me who you spend most of your time with. Show me the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and I'll tell you what kind of person you are, right? And so Taylor makes the case that honestly, your network is your net worth. And in this episode, which is very special, he teaches us how to build a genuine, meaningful network, having really recruited some great people and also just built a name for himself in the industry. So perhaps not so code heavy. This is still code as an industry and as an ecosystem. And I hope you enjoy the deep dive with Taylor. Now, I'd like to make this available to everybody at no cost. This is indeed separate to my day job. And the way we can do that is through partners and sponsors. Let's take a moment to acknowledge them. The Contagious Code podcast is partnered with Code Crafters. Code Crafters is a great way to learn how to code or level up your coding skills. How it works is you pick a programming language like JavaScript, Python, Rust, and you pick a tool that developers use like Redis or Docker or Git. And what they'll teach you to do is build that tool in the language you choose. Like, let's build Git from scratch in JavaScript. And by doing this, you get better at JavaScript and better at Git while learning along the way. They have a generous free tier, but if you want to pay, you can get up to 40% off using the link in the show notes. That's tej.as/codecrafters. We're open to more partnerships and sponsorships. This podcast, I shouldn't maybe sound so surprised, but has been a real blessing to me, but also to the sponsors and partners. The CEO of Code Crafters will tell you, Sarup, he's a friend. In any case, feel free to reach out. We're happy to partner with whosoever. But for now, here's my discussion with Taylor Desseyn. Taylor Desseyn, welcome.
Ooh.
I'm so excited to have you here. I've been a guest on your podcast some time ago. It was a space on Twitter back when it was called Twitter. And so I'm happy to hang out and chat, man.
Same. I'm obviously a big fan of you and what you do, and I've seen you speak, and you're one of the most prolific speakers I've ever met. And so excited to be here and excited to talk about it, all the things.
Yeah. Specifically you're the main event. And I'd like to start this discussion, Taylor, from a place of enmity, because like we're friends, but I feel like there's this enmity between recruiters and engineers, and this podcast is listened to primarily by engineers and builders, founders and CEOs and things like that. What would you say to these folks who see recruiters as, it's more people on LinkedIn, I hate them?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I always tell people I am not going to convince you to not like a recruiter at this point in your career. I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of bad ones. There's a whole issue with the industry that we can definitely get into. At the end of the day, it is hard to prioritize relationships when at the end of the day, staffing companies are focused on making revenue, right? And so when you put a dollar sign on a person, it becomes an issue. And I would say that's really feasibly that really is the biggest issue when it comes to recruiting is that. I would tell people that you're gonna have to kiss a lot of frogs, right? Going back to the whole fairy tale of kissing a lot of frogs. But I will tell you this, I think if you can find like 1 to 3 recruiters that are kind of just in your corner, send you opportunities. I mean, you may never even take an opportunity from them, but to like know the market, where it's heading, where it's going, I think that's enough value added in of itself. And unfortunately, though, there's not a lot of recruiters that know the industry that well. And so again, like it is a problem. But my biggest suggestion to folks is give us a chance. Give us a chance. Because I do think you're going to be happy once you do find the few recruiters that are in your corner.
Do you think the difference is that engineers speak a specific language? And I don't mean a programming language.
Oh
They
yeah,
speak like they're just
it's
like
culture.
in some ways, yeah, it's culture, right? And
Yeah,
and you have I've had my fair share of unfortunately negative interactions with recruiters. More
sure,
when I was younger, like early career.
sure.
And the thing that bothered me was it was folks who just didn't know what they were talking about,
Yeah,
and I was like, why are you pretending? And I understand that they're pretending because they've got to fill some quota, but this whole thing doesn't feel human anymore. And so extrapolating for that, from my perspective, it was people who just were really just doing like word soup to a dollar sign end,
sure.
and that's what does that track?
It does. I will also tell you that some of the word soup actually comes from engineering leaders as well. So I'm going to say this hot take here. Recruiters, a lot of us are bad. I'm going to say this, but a lot of the issues that you have with recruiters comes from engineering leaders who don't know what the heck is going on. And so literally, I'm telling you, I have been in engineering calls earlier in my career with engineering leaders, and I have even questioned I never forget. I was literally in a call. I was on a call. I was recruiting. We're recruiting some data stage, ETL data stage roles, right? And like I mean, like I don't like what the heck's a data stage, anyways. But basically, it's like I was on the call with the manager, and I was like, Mr. Manager, like one of the things I really pride myself on is telling developers like what they're going to be walking into, what's the project. Can you give me that information? He goes, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. Come again?
Wow.
So again, and it's like literally there was one time I was talking with an engineering leader at a big consulting company. They're looking for like open source databases. And I forgot at the time the exact verbiage I used, but at the time I knew it was no, not open source. It was a NoSQL database. And I said a NoSQL database. And the manager literally talked, he goes, no, that's not it. Or that's not one. And I was like, wait, what?
Interesting.
And I went and Googled it just to make sure. I was like, holy cow, it is. And so, yes, the word soup primarily comes from the recruiters not being trained properly, which is a whole nother conversation. But really when it comes down, but also we deal with a lot of engineering leaders who have no idea what they're doing as well, which really does not help recruiters at all.
I love that. And you know what, man? Good on you for calling that out because I also have worked with so many engineering leaders who do that, and it's just posturing. It's like, oh, look at me, I
Crazy.
know these words. Yeah, absolutely. And it was super difficult for me, Taylor, because like when I was early career, obviously like any early career person you have a lot to prove. People think you're dumb, people think you're fresh, people think you don't know stuff, people think, I mean, you have nothing, you have literally no track record, right? And combine that with the fact that you don't look like everybody else. I was brown and all white teeth multiple times, and there was just a lot of underestimation, to the point where people were using, like tech leaders, like the CTO was using big words that I felt bad for not knowing. I found out years later that he didn't even know what he was talking
Makes
about. So
sense.
that's so cool
Makes
that
sense.
you call that out. Yeah, and so it's this pipeline of people just being ignorant all the way down. That's so cool. Interesting. Now, would you say then what sets the good recruiters, apart from the bad ones, is that the good ones prioritize relationships. They're probably like quick to admit, listen, I don't know the technical jargon, but we're looking for somebody who can do this. And because like I'm trying to isolate what makes you awesome. I went on Twitter some time ago, right? And I said you are the best tech recruiter I know personally, and the best one in the field, hands down, right? And so I'm trying to like extract what makes Taylor Desseyn Taylor Desseyn. Is it just that you're humble and personable and going like, look, I just care about this relationship. I don't really want to pretend.
Yeah, I think there's a few kind of layers here. I think the first thing is extreme awareness, right? So like going back to what you're saying about developers have their own like talk, right? Their own code, and we're not talking about .NET, right? We're talking about actual how they speak, how they interact. The culture of engineering is very nuanced, right? And one of the things that I have realized early on is that recruiters don't understand the culture of engineers, right? They just try to be a recruiter. And what I realized, I think it's the greatest form of marketing. And somebody, the DevRel master that you are, like to truly do DevRel correctly, it's a lot of listening and a lot of observing. And nobody does that, right? God gave us two ears and a mouth for a reason, to listen twice as much as we talk,
Oh,
right? And
preach it.
so and so for me, like that's one thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I love to yap. I love to talk. The fact you said that we're right before we got on the call, like we're going to talk for an hour and a half. I was like, sign me up. This is what I'm made for. But I do a lot of observing when it comes to the market. And so I think that's what recruiters need to do. Like whatever their skill set is, whether it's just engineering like me, or whether it's ERP, CRM, Dynamics, or SAP, you're going to have a whole different type of culture there. But figure out the culture and try to fit into that culture as much as possible, right? I think another thing that I would recommend is recruiters need to be highly competitive, right? I hate to lose. I hate to lose. And I think when it comes to recruiters or numbers, I mean, literally to put it in perspective, the company I started at, that I was there for 11 years, literally they posted the scorecard of where you were at dollar revenue wise compared to everybody else in the organization
Oh
every
my
week.
gosh.
Every week. I looked at that scorecard for about 6 years in a row. Then I realized
Oh
it
my
wasn't doing
gosh.
wonders for my mental health. And so I stopped looking at it. And that is the time where I started to prioritize relationships over money. Because here's the deal. What I've realized is your net worth is your network. There are recruiters in my entire career who have made more money than me, who have climbed a ladder faster than me, who have done all the things better than me, right? But in my opinion, there's no recruiter that has built the rapport of an entire community that like I have when it comes to engineering market. And for me, that has allowed me to advance my career, right? I said this actually, I had the opportunity to go speak at Black Men in Tech in Fort Lauderdale this past week. Very blessed to lead a panel on the job search and how to be an ally in tech. And like one of the things that like I talked about is what is really what has helped me is just being in people's corners, but also like knowing people to their core and just like letting those people be those people and just supporting them along for the ride. And I would say that's been another thing that's been incredibly important to me. On top of being competitive, on top of listening, and on top of just having this people first mindset.
That's
I,
amazing.
I felt like I rambled there a little bit, but
No, that's the point. The point is to make you yap and then make whatever you're yapping
yeah,
about be contagious,
yeah. I
uncontagious.
love
So,
that. It's such a good name of
no,
podcast.
thanks. Yeah. Okay, so it's this highly personal nature. It's embedding yourself in your network, in the people's lives, and just being an ally. I love that. I love that you said your net worth is your network. Do you think people can sense intention? And the
Yes,
reason yeah, absolutely, right? Because like
yes.
when you come at me to say hi or something, or even like I don't know, like place me for a job, you never have. But I mean,
Right.
if you did, I wouldn't be
That'd
opposed
be cool.
because like I wouldn't. I would see Taylor approaching me and I'm like, oh, it's Taylor. I know Taylor. Like we have a relationship versus some rando recruiter on LinkedIn who's motivated by something that I don't know yet. Okay, so it sounds like you agree. We can smell intentions
I think
and we make a lot of
developers,
decisions.
I think developers in general, I think have a heightened smell. Like I don't know, I don't know if that's even real, but I just feel like developers. I think, man, I think people are so tired of being sold to. I think people are so being. I think developers are so tired of getting the cold calls from the recruiters and the cold calls from the latest SaaS company to try our product for free to freemium, and then we'll charge you. And I think people are just tired. And I think people now more than ever crave real relationships. And I think that's why people are so quick to sniff out intention.
Amen. And you know what? I would attribute. I don't. Some would call me successful. Some wouldn't. Right. And like wherever you
I'm
land
just
on that
saying,
is really
yeah,
up.
yeah.
It's up to
I
them.
think
But
you're
like,
successful. I think you're successful.
thanks. I think you're successful.
I appreciate that.
This is that Spider-Man meme where we point at each other. No,
Yeah.
but I think like if there is any success on either of our sides, I think a lot of it comes from just being for the person. Like everything I do, like when I travel, I'm going to India literally sometime this week, right? And then I'm going to New York, and then I'm going to Las Vegas, and then I'm going to. It's just this travel is not healthy, and I can feel it like suck away my life force, but. I'm motivated by the people I'm going to go teach and watch their careers change and grow. And it's like the best feeling in the world, right? And so that's my intention. I think it becomes very clear. And I think that is something people can sense. And that's probably why the success comes. To tie it back to what you said, your net worth is your network. I love that.
Yeah, and I think my big thing and I remember where I was going with that because I kind of got distracted in my thoughts. Like I have been a recruiter in every position that I've landed since my first company has been because of like the technical community. So
What does that mean?
like to me that means so that like everybody who I've been placed by has been a like essentially a developer
Right.
or like in the developer community. Literally, the job, the job before this job at Torque, I was placed by my biggest competitor recruiter in Nashville.
Wow.
My biggest competitor. Shout out Hunter Mitchell.
Wild.
He's great. He's one of the best recruiters in Nashville. I love that dude to death. Understands people, right? And he placed me, or he got me connected, right?
Wow.
This last one, I got connected. I got placed because a developer years ago invited me to speak at a boot camp. I still remember it was one of my very first like I'm speaking at a boot camp. Like I was so excited as a recruiter, right? And I still get excited, but like then it was like oh my gosh, and that person essentially got my now boss introduced to me over Twitter. My boss has been following me for years, and I got a job because of that. Like the ripple effect that people don't
Yeah.
understand that being nice to people plays it. Like if I told that guy years ago, like boot camps are beneath me. I don't do boot camps. Do you pay for this? Because I don't take, you know, and I know people have different places in their career. I get that. But like for me at the time, if I was like, I don't do boot camps, I only take paid gigs, I would have missed out on the opportunity. I would not be
Right.
where I'm at today.
Yeah, and I
Isn't that
think the big
crazy?
takeaway there is for everybody to watch Jim Carrey's movie Yes Man, and
Yeah.
and that's actually how I live my life. I just say yes. Like I check the calendar. Any conflicts? No. Okay, let's do it.
Sure.
Now it's not sustainable. I'm starting to like I'm getting older and I'm starting to feel the effects on my health. So I'm starting to have to like either say no or ask for some type of compensation or something. But
Sure.
it's literally
100%.
because like I can't do it anymore. But yeah, no, I think that's a huge takeaway for everybody. Taylor, you're not just a recruiter, right? You're a leader. You've got all this content. You have a person who follows you around and films everything. You've got all of this media going on. Can we talk about that? Like, how does that happen? You mentioned this early job where it was very competitive and it was taking a toll on your mental health because of the posting of the money on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we get from that to the Taylor the leader today?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. You're asking some great questions. So what I realized is that for the first 7 years of my career, what fueled me is not even finances, not even making money. It was the competitive nature of it, right? I grew up playing soccer, proper football. I grew up playing hockey at a very high level, still play hockey. I grew up sailing competitively on a lake that I grew up on. Like everything that I do, I turn it into a competition. Like I remember mowing the lawn when I was younger, and I would literally
That's awesome.
set a timer and see how fast I could mow the lawn every time and see if I could beat my time. Like I am I am insanely competitive. And so for me, for the first 6, 7 years of my career at my first company, I was like really motivated by the numbers of where I stood. But it got old after a while, right? Like I was like, at the end of the day, I'm kind of at this space. I'm kind of at this spot. Like it's not really going to change. Like at that point in my career, I was pretty consistent, steady Eddie. Like I was like, I'm not like, this is where I'm at. So for me, I was like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more than just numbers on a scorecard. And I was like, well, what really motivates me? And it was helping people. Again, kind of very similar to you. I think this is why, we connect so well. It's like there's just this desire to help people. For me, it was advancing people in my careers. And so for me, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start like giving back to the community. So I started to speak a lot at Nashville Software School, which is a great boot camp out of Nashville that pumps out some really good junior engineers. And so I started getting there. I got introduced to speaking at conferences in 2013 in Raleigh. I was in the Research Triangle area for a year, and I spoke at a code camp, and I was like, man, like this is, this was fun. And so then I was like, well, I want to look into more ways to help people. I want to help developers, like senior developers. And so I like went to like I like was like, well, are there conferences out there? So like in 2018, 2017, I started to speak at, these code conferences that we all speak at. and and I was the only recruiter. I was the only recruiter. And I was like, man, this is great. This is easy. Like, there's no other recruiters. There's no competition. Like, there's not even really a lot of recruiters at the booths. Let's be honest. It's mainly just SaaS companies trying to sell you a demo. So, like, man, this is like taking candy from babies. And so, all that being said, I was like, I started to get involved in that, and then COVID hit. And I was like,
Oh no.
well, damn. Now what? And so, essentially, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go all in on content because at that point I saw the market shift. I think one of the things I do really well is I see not the future by any means, but I see trends, right? So what I saw when COVID hit is that our company at the time was very focused on local talent, right? We're going to provide you the best Nashville developer and we're going to send you the best restaurant to eat at as well, right? But when COVID hit, I was like, something's changing. Local markets don't exist anymore, right? Boston companies can
Right.
come into Nashville and pick it. And actually, Nashville got ravaged in the best way because senior developers were getting paid $50,000 to $75,000 under market average. So basically, when COVID happened, the top got ripped off, and then all the best engineers started to get paid average, but they started to work at companies in California and Boston, New York. So I was like, something's happening. It's now a distributed workforce. And so that's when I started to go all in on content because I was like, how am I going to reach people across the country just calling people on Dice? Like if I focus on just calling people on Dice, Indeed, Career Builder, Monster, LinkedIn, Tejas, I don't know if you and I would have ever met. I don't know
Yeah,
if I don't know if
you
I met
hung out where the
anybody.
developers are. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I don't know if I met anybody. So I would have been like a 90-year-old man, just like calling the same Jeff Smith in like, Paducah, Iowa. I don't know if that's even a place, time and time again, right? So for me, I just realized that, and so I started on content creation. I mean, listen, I took a lot of pointers from Gary Vaynerchuk. I followed him really early on, the email, the texting communities, all that stuff. Spun that up, started to build community before I even knew what it was. Started my podcast. I mean, I used to open up my phone daily, horizontal, and just use to film myself, right? Like that's what I used to do, and
Yeah.
did that. I promise I'm almost done with this question. 4 years later, or the answer rather, 4 years later, I was like, you know what? Like it's time to like really kind of put the pedal to the metal. And the latest thing that I just released actually today on Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube is with the support of Torque, I am heading up a build in public cinematic vlog that's
Wow.
all shot in 4K. And it is the story of us building the world's largest online technical community one step at a time. Because what I truly feel like is that everybody needs a Netflix show. Everybody needs, and YouTube's doing a lot of stuff, coming soon about kind of like getting more towards like Netflix. And so I even have a videographer, another videographer follow me around, kind of a new team follow me around that's local in Nashville, and there's going to be recording conversations and stuff. So yeah, for me, I just realized that the way developers want to be reached, and really anybody, but mainly developers, is they want to be reached through meaningful content. But I also tie in a lot of pop culture, like fashion stuff. So there's two guys that I follow. One guy's developing a fashion brand, men's fashion brand in New York City called Mint in New York. They're a running brand mainly. And then another guy who's doing this, he's building an e-com company out of China, in Dubai. His name's Daniel Dalen. So Marcus Malone and Daniel Dalen are both entrepreneurs that are building this build in public vlog that is exponentially shot their growth up, and that's what I want to do with where I'm at right now.
That's really cool. Thank you for this whole long arc.
Yeah.
I love that it all comes back to you being hyper competitive, but also hypersensitive to where the industry is going. Where's the market going? Where's the people going? Right? You said when COVID hit, you're like, whoa, 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 something is happening, and you were sensitive to that. I think that's the takeaway. That's the thing that people can extract and put into
Well, it's
their everyday
interesting.
lives.
It's interesting you said sensitive because one of my knocks growing up is I was always told I was too sensitive as a kid. You're too sensitive. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. Like, you don't need to cry. You don't need to be mad. You don't need to be sad, from just various people. But now I've
Yeah,
realized like that's my superhero weapon thingamajigger, right? Where it's
yeah,
like,
totally.
to me, I love that you said that, and that really validates a lot of my childhood. To be honest, you even saying that just now, because I realize like it really truly is a strength. I'm very sensitive to people and where the market is. And now my big change is I really truly people want to watch the behind the scenes and the building of things more than like the polished. And so and again, that's kind of my new endeavor.
Yeah, and it's also, and I do want to dive into that because it's also behind the scenes. You say it's not polished, but it is polished because it's highly
Yeah, right,
cinematic.
right,
It's
right.
just
Yeah, yeah,
um, about the sensitivity. Amen. I also grew up in a similar case, but I think what they don't tell you is the most adaptive thing for human beings, for really anyone with predators around, is to be sensitive. Like this is why deer hunting is so hard, right? Like you make too much noise and the deer just runs away,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's actually good for. It's extremely sensitive to sounds because it's a survival thing. So yeah, I was told being sensitive is dumb, but this is something my children will never hear. And also,
Yeah.
I think if you look at the people who aren't sensitive, oftentimes, unfortunately, these people aren't sensible because they just
So
haven't been
true.
paying attention, you know.
Yep.
And so yeah,
I love that.
so you now switched roles recently. You work at Torque. You're the
Yeah.
VP of Global Community
Yeah.
as of October 2024.
Yep.
You've got 13 plus years of experience before that, and you
Yep.
mentioned you came on board with Torque to create high quality content,
Yeah.
cinematic content for
Yep.
building the hiring community. Let's take a moment talk about Torque. What is Torque? It's a hiring community, but what does that mean? I'd like to just like have you explain Torque to us.
Yeah, so we're a talent marketplace fueled by community, right? So you go sign up. I think there's a huge shift. And again, another thing that I'm seeing too, right? So every staffing company that I talk to right now, all my buddies in staffing, there are individuals that are doing very well. But as a whole, I've not heard of a staffing company that's like, we're crushing it right now. Like no one's crushing it. Everybody's down,
Yeah.
right? Um, and there's a huge push into talent marketplaces. And so Torque is a talent marketplace. Torque was founded a few years ago. I'm actually super blessed. The entire C-suite at Torque are all engineers that have been together for years, like 20 years. Like they were
Wow.
coding together in consulting firms like when in their 20s, and then now they're in their 40s, 50s, right? And so basically Torque is, if you go to our website, and we're working on the copy here, so bear with us. Again, kind of the building in public, right? We're just going to be open about it. If you read it, it sounds like we staff for AI, we do, but like our platform is like pretty AI focused. I didn't realize this up until Boston this last week when I was up there. We have like 4 different AI levers that we pull, and I'm not technical enough to understand
Wow.
what they are, but it's pretty fascinating about how fast we can like pull information and how to do it and yada yada yada. And they were talking about LLMs and all this other stuff I don't know about. But so like basically like we have that. So we're talent marketplace. So go sign up, torc.dev. right? Like that's it. And then basically we reach out to you when we have a job present. Now, we have over 100,000 people on the platform.
Wow.
So that's a lot. So the fact of the matter is that what my goal is to make sure you don't feel like a number.
Hmm.
Because the problem is all these talent marketplaces just are like, go sign up. And you're like, okay, great, another one. And you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
Right? So what are we doing to make people feel welcome? And actually one of the things that I'm pulling from is or my saying now, and my newsletter is called this, and it's going to be kind of consistent through everything, is welcome home. Welcome home. Because what I want for this community is for you to not go through the job search alone. My keynote that at that conference that you keynoted as well together,
I remember,
was called "You're Not Alone," and it's kind of come full circle because what my mission is I don't want developers to feel alone in their job search. And so the community that we are building is, whether you use us or not, I want you to feel like you can always fall back to us, right? Because the job search, again, lonely, terrifying. We as human beings are not meant to go through life alone, let alone the job search alone. And so I want you to find a home on torc.dev through our Discord, through meetups that we're going to spin up, through all the other things that we're doing as well. That's kind of the role in and of itself.
How does it work at torc.dev? So I've never used a recruiter in my life. I don't know how. So do I understand correctly that developers join the community
sign up.
and they build up a profile?
Yep.
And that's it. And then at some point you call them and be like, hey, I found a match. Do you want it?
We basically get rid of the annoying recruiter step.
Okay.
I mean, just to be honest. But again, like I think this is why it's so important, and I'm so thankful to work with the leadership of torc.dev, is because they understand that developers need community to make this thing work. Like if we didn't have community, you're just like, hey, go sign up on our platform. If we reached out to you for the job that you're a match for, you're probably going to be like,
right,
whatever, right? Great, sign me up, or sure, get me an interview. I want you to be like, oh yeah, like Torque reached out to me. Hell yeah, I want this job, and that's my goal.
So it's you the developer would shape the dream job they want, and then if Torque finds it, Torque sends you an email, and you go like, oh my gosh, this is the one.
Correct, and that's what I want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so we do a lot in Latin America. You know, I've had some DMs already. They're like, would you do US? We do US. We do all over the world. Our focus right now is to build community in Latin America. And when I say community, I mean just even get people on the job platform. I think what I've seen in this role already in the 6 weeks I've been here is people use the word community kind of very loosely, and it's not really community. We're trying to drive people to sign up to our platform right now in Latin America, but we definitely do in the US. I'm actually, one of the goals is to get into India as well. And we're already in India. We're already bringing on a lot of engineers from India, but so maybe I'll make my first trip out to India eventually. We'll see.
I'm actually going to India soon, so I'll be sure to tell everyone to go sign up. I am going to React India. That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm emceeing, so I'm going to tell everyone to go to Torque, sign up.
You should.
Yeah, why not? I mean, there's people who want jobs, man. And if they can get the perfect job with Torque, then power to them.
Yeah.
How does it work in terms of like the business side of it? Like, does Torque, when they place someone at a company, does the company pay Torque for the right candidate?
So then at that point, it's kind of your traditional staffing arrangement. We can either work on consulting, kind of fixed bid. We work on, one-off placements. We work on consultant agreements. Like, it's kind of whatever we want to work at. Fortunately for me, this is the first time in my 13, 14-year career where I don't have to try to sell to the company. So I've literally spent 13, 14 years. My entire compensation for the most part has been spent, you need to buy from me, you need to buy from me, you need to buy from me. And when you have that, it is really hard to navigate how developers feel and looking out for developers' best interests when the developers don't pay you.
Right, yeah.
The company pays you. Right? And so it's been this balancing act for years. And this is the first opportunity, which is what I'm so grateful for, where I can really just love on developers, create community, figure out a structure, and grow this thing.
So I love this whole idea of everybody needs a Netflix show and just documenting the process.
Yeah.
In fact, that's why people listen to this podcast is oftentimes when we talk with technical authors of code, we go deep behind the scenes into things. My most popular conference talk ever was one where we went behind the scenes of React and looked at its guts, like how is this built? My book Fluent React sells a lot because it's about the internals. Anyway, you get the point. So this TV series or Netflix series idea is really awesome.
Yeah.
What data did you have to convince management to do this, because it's expensive, right? And you've got to talk about ROI and like it's going to be worth it. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's again, it's total support. I mean, every stop that I've been at, I've had the marketing support, budget support from the company. So everywhere I've been, I've not had to pay for myself, which I am super, super, super grateful for. This is an endeavor that was very easy, and if my boss listens to this, thank you. I don't mean this in a mean way, but it was very easy to convince my boss. But the reason for that is because I've put in the groundwork for the last 4 years, right? I have remained consistent. I would say it's the equivalent of so I started golfing recently, right? Like, and it's a very hard sport. But I really like it. It gets me outside. It gets me an excuse to hang out, with other guy friends, and it's just great community, yada, yada, yada. But I didn't. So right now when I'm golfing, I'm not going to go play with like scratch golfers, right? Like, I'm not bad. I almost broke 100 the other day, which is pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah. But like, I'm not going to go golf with guys who like golf like 72, 70, 69, 68, right? Because like at that point, I'm just like, I don't even need to be in the same area. So like I'm working up to that. I didn't go to my boss at Torque without creating a single piece of content and ask for this.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I've developed the muscle memory, or you can talk about workout. Like, I'm not going to go run a 40-yard dash right now. If I run a 40-yard dash,
Right.
both my hamstrings will leave my body, right? Because I'm not trained up enough for it. I have not trained for that. I have trained over the last 4 or 5 years how to build on content and how to communicate effectively to the masses, to where when I went to my boss, who's been following me on Twitter, who knows how I operate, listen, I know numbers, right? Like, I mean, I average around 3 to 5 million impressions across all social media platforms a month. So it's
Wow.
like, for me, it's like, again, I've put in the reps. Like, I know what needs to be done. And this is the first time, while I am housing the YouTube vlog on my YouTube, because I am the leader. I think people want to buy from people. I have a whole nother content creation strategy for the Torque platform that we'll eventually get into, but all that's just going to be basically how-tos, to-dos about the job search, technical content as well. For me, all of my content now is just documenting in public what we're building. And so it still goes back to the Torque platform, but it's through me, where I've spent the last 4 years building my brand, and now I'm funneling that to Torque, right? And I think
Right.
it's interesting. I've seen 3 or 4 blog posts, email newsletters now about this one position, which is very similar to the community role that I have. It's called a head of growth role, right?
Mm.
And it's like, the article is like, and I've seen it. It's different people writing about this. It's like, what's like the most popular type of role over the next 5 years, and it's this head of growth role. And if you read through the job description, it's basically everything. It's just DevRel. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just DevRel. It's knowing your audience, how to go viral, how to build community, how to market, how to get into sub communities. I mean, it's just DevRel, right? And so now mainstream and D2C brands and stuff are picking up on it. But again, I think people want to buy into people, right? Like when I follow your career, Tejas, I follow you wherever company you go to. If that
Right.
company is it feels like they should hire you, then I trust that company. I'm going to say
Right.
that one more time for all the hiring managers who don't actually believe in DevRel. If Tejas goes to a company and you hire Tejas, I'm going to immediately believe in that company because you hired Tejas.
Wow.
And that's how people think. That's how people think. But the
Yeah.
problem is that companies got to put their egos aside, and founders got to put their egos aside, because Tejas could probably move the needle more from a marketing and branding perspective than the CEO and the marketing department, more than anything else. So put your
I'm
ego aside, build up individuals at the company, because those individuals at the company are going to be better salespeople and better marketing people than any team that you have.
I'm smiling because that's hilarious, and I hope my I hope my team listens to this at DataStax. No, but I've been in situations before where very similar to you, right? Like I get offered a position because people look at me from a distance from LinkedIn or social media or something, and what they see fundamentally is success and potential. And I'm trying not to be immodest about that, but I think it's
100%.
pretty,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I get these positions, and it's been my past experience with companies that I no longer work at, where I get hired because of some success that they see. And after, I don't know, man, like 6 to 9 months of working there, for some reason, the autonomy that was given to me to basically like, hey, come do what you want, make it successful, make this company successful, like whatever you've done on LinkedIn, that just goes away. It's so weird, and I don't really have an explanation. I'm curious if you've experienced this yourself. I feel like we're in very similar boats. But you join somewhere and they're like, please make us successful. We need your input, and then it just like suddenly, I don't know what happens. Like it goes away. It gets taken for granted. But maybe this is just me. I'm curious if you had similar experience.
Now, if you're listening to this on audio, I'm grinning and nodding my head through that entire segment that Tejas was talking. No, same, same.
Why? That's so weird. I don't get it.
I think. You mean at the first company I was at, two CMOs tried to shut me down.
Oh wow.
First off, we went through two CMOs. That's a red flag. Actually, we went
Yeah.
through like 8. That's a whole nother conversation in and of itself. Right? But they try to shut me down.
But it was their decision to hire you.
So I think at the end of the day, I think people's egos get in the way. Right. And I think it's hard. And listen, I'm trying to deploy empathy here. Tejas, I know you're big on empathy. Like, right. I try to deploy empathy, and I try to understand where people are coming from. If you are a startup and you hire a guy whose brand is bigger than your startup, and you want to funnel more money into that individual's brands, I understand the concern. But let me ask you something. Where are you without that person? Do people know about you? The answer is probably not. Right? And so for me, like a company I was at was running $40,000 of ad spend a month.
Wow.
I had multiple salespeople come to me and say the opportunities I was bringing in, again, I'm not fabricating anything, that I was bringing in was more viable than the sales leads that were coming in from $40,000 a month of ads.
Wow.
Now, again, let me ask you something. Do people want to buy from people, or do people want to buy from companies? People want to buy from people, because people are where relationships happen. Again, when I was interviewing this last time, I talked to multiple people. One guy who you and I know really well, who used to work there, told me that they laid off their entire marketing team. And you know what they said? Said our best sales leads, which should be coming from marketing, come from one individual who is always out speaking and on the circuit.
Wow.
Marketing's changing. You are, I mean, I'm gonna give you your flowers here. You are early on this. I mean, you are, like I said, when it comes to DevRel, I think literally you and I think Tessa. And I mean, there's a lot of other great ones, but like just off the top of my head, and it's like marketing's changing. Marketing is going with the individuals, but I think it's really hard for companies to go, okay, here's $100,000 budget just for your brand. I get it. I get it. But I'm gonna tell you this: companies, if you trust the people who you hire, and if you give them the budget to do that, you are not going to be disappointed.
I agree. Amen to everything you've said. I've seen this happen. Man, it's so validating to have someone else.
Well, same here, because I feel crazy. I feel crazy.
Same. Yeah. Hey, for real. I was like, how does this it happened multiple times?
That's
like
the title of the show. Call us crazy.
Yeah. Is it really? No, it's not.
No, I'm saying that should be the title
of this episode for sure. Yeah, because like it's happened so many times where during the interviews it's all great, and hey, we need exactly what you have. We need that, and then it just goes away. And there was one job that I had in particular where it felt very much like okay, now our startup is as engaged as your audience, so we don't need you anymore. Thank you for everything. Goodbye. And I was like, wow, that is brutal. In any case, I'm really happy this isn't a unique experience. Okay, so did you have something to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess before we move on, or next question, I think I think it is important, right? And I think it's important for that individual if you hire a Tejas or a Taylor or whoever. I think it is important that the individual you hire points back to the company, right? And for me, like that is what I'm doing. And I think they're definitely like that's got to be aware. And I think the CEO needs to trust or whoever, CEO, CTO, like I report to the CTO, right? Like whoever you report to needs to understand how this works. If you don't understand how it works, really trust the person. And then if you have questions about things, like just ask us. Right? Like, hey, Taylor, like you're you seem to be self-promoting a little bit here. Could you mention Torque a little bit more? Like, what are your thoughts here? Right. And I'll tell you my thoughts on it. The problem is that, and this maybe goes into a larger conversation, adults don't like to have hard conversations. They just don't. I had to have one this morning with somebody on my team. I didn't like it, but man, like that's where the growth is, right? And I think as a leader in an organization, if you do want to go this individual kind of, if we want to call it like creator, influencer, DevRel route, whatever, I think you should. And I think if you have questions, lean on those people because I will tell you this. The type of people who are producing content like Tejas and I'm not going to speak for the entire industry, but are sensitive people, and we are willing to work with you. You just have to ask.
Totally. Not only are we willing to work with people, because of being sensitive, we tend to be sensitive to also, excuse my language, but bullshit.
Okay, we can curse. Okay, good. I've been holding that just a little bit.
There's been times where I can smell some weird ego play. Something's just not right.
Same.
And I'm just like, just like I'm sensitive. I know what's happening here. Just tell me.
Let's just call it what it is. Yeah.
Just call it what it is. Exactly. And the other thing is, I feel like because we're so visual, it's not like we have to work at one place anyway, And this maybe sounds a little bit disloyal of me, but I've typically tended to when I start to smell ego, when I start to be micromanaged, when things start to deviate from our original agreement, I don't stay very long. I understand there's privilege here, but I think that also needs to be a variable in this game that the leadership tends to play. It's like, look, you're not just like the first job I ever had, Taylor, was extremely toxic, and nobody knew who I was back then. I was early career; it was my first job, but it was so toxic that when I asked for a raise, the CTO who I reported to laughed in my face and was like, "There's no way you deserve that. Come on, let's be real." And what ended up happening was 2 months later, I had a new job and I left for for $10,000 more a year. And when I 5 to 10 years later, actually not 10, it was like 7 years later, I met the co-founder of this company just randomly in the city. And he told me that, hey, the day you quit, that's the day the CEO came to me and said, we just lost our best engineer all these years later. You see, and if there was no gameplay, if we just talked at eye level, I probably would have stayed. I wanted to ask you about, you said when you work with a company like Torque, or when I work at DataStax or whatever it may be, it's the responsibility of the person to point back to the company, right? I want to talk about the balance here. I feel like there's nuance because there's
so much nuance.
There's the danger of not doing it enough to where you're just self-promoting and you don't really care. It's very apparent to everybody that you don't care about the company.
Sure.
But the other end of the spectrum is you just become a shill, right?
Yeah,
and
I know.
and what credibility you had. Yeah, and what credibility you had with your authentically built community earlier, it starts to go away because people are like, yeah, of course he's going to say that about Torque. He works there. Of course he's wearing the Torque shirt. Of course he's telling you Torque's great. So how does one balance this tension of I don't care about the company at all and I'm only self-promoting versus I'm a shill. I'm just a puppet.
Yeah, I think that's so good. Also, for the record, and again, this is a Carhartt branded hoodie. This is the nicest piece of swag I've ever gotten. Companies make good swag. Every swag you're going to get from Torque is going to be great. I'll just say that. I think this is a fascinating question. It's so nuanced. It is so nuanced. And I don't know if I can answer this question like really well. But I do have to say, again, I think you need to hire people who have that sensitive nature and who understand the fine line of it, right? I will tell you this, like I hired Jason Torres, right? Like, I mean, Jason has done so much in the community already. And I think he's doing a great playful job, right? He's doing stuff that I wouldn't do, but like that's okay. Like he understands like how that he built his community the way he wants to build his community. He's funny and he does all this funny, goofy stuff, and I love it and I want to support it. And I think at the end of the day, I think it's raising awareness but never asking, right? We can say, hey, come join our platform. Hey, come join our Discord. We're not making you buy anything. We're just saying, hey, we're going to give you the resources, right? Or like, hey, come check out our, Discord if I'm a SaaS company, or let's come check out, our this webinar we're doing. We're going to demo this new feature, yada yada yada, right? Like I think there are things like that you can do, and I think as long as you're not going, hey, please buy my product, like literally almost using those words over and over again, like I think you're good. I would also say that it's the whole give, 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 ask. Like you need to be giving to the community, right? I would say like you give 99 times and then you ask for 100, the 100th time, right? And I think that's a great, like I think that's the answer. I think that's the answer right there. I think ask yourself, am I giving or am I taking from the community? And if you find yourself taking more than you are giving, then that is a problem.
Interesting. And what I'm hearing is if you're a shill, meaning if you're the guy who wears the hoodie, drinks all the Kool-Aid, all you talk about is
Yeah.
your company, you're taking, you're not actually giving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, the one thing I'm fascinated with, and this is another level of like content and like marketing yourself. What I realize is the more that you can get away from work and the more personal content you can put out. That's why I did my personal vlog for what, 4 years,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
I got to vlog 357. And that was, but I had done already 300 vlogs before that. I just didn't count them properly. So I had like 600 daily vlogs pretty much. And like I got more people, I built more rapport with the non-technical stuff, right? And the non-job search stuff. And actually that's why my latest newsletter I put out, I'm moving away from the job search content. Now, I'm putting the job search content on the Torque platform,
Right.
but I'm tired about how to write 5 ways to write a resume. I'm tired. I'm tired of talking about how to write a LinkedIn or 10 questions. Like there's a lot of great people on the LinkedIn or on Twitter to follow that are great with that stuff. I think where I can really help is like documenting and talking about the behind the scenes of stuff that not many people have the eye to do. So yeah, again, I think, I don't know, I forgot what the question was, but I lost my train of thought. This conversation is so exciting that my brain's going like all over the place. I'm having a hard time
That's all
focusing.
right.
But so yeah, anyways, all being said, like, what was the question? I don't remember the question. What was the damn question?
That's all good. The question was when you're shilling your company too much, you
Oh
end up
wow,
taking from them.
I really got way
That's
out
all
of the way
good.
on that one. Anyways, yeah. So just oh yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Okay, here we go. First local moment right here. I haven't even had any caffeine today. Is
You're
focus.
drinking coffee as we're talking.
I'm
You
drinking
realize.
decaf. It's all decaf.
Oh,
All
wow.
decaf. Yeah, which is cortisol levels and stuff. It's a whole other conversation. But for me, it's I would employ companies to actually talk about like have like a public fantasy football league or proper football league or and like publicly talk about it, right? I'd have if your employees are really big on mental or physical health, I'd have a blog about it. I'd have a Whoop group.
Mhm.
I think from a marketing side of things, I think if you can bring people in from a community perspective, not about business, your community is going to grow like tenfold. Because I think people are tired. I think people are tired of being sold. Again, that people are tired. And I
Yeah.
think if you can give them like that's why I started to document my hockey team. Because dude, people, I mean, I've met so many people on tech Twitter that play ice hockey, right? So again, that's another thing I would do as well. 2 cents.
That's so interesting. I think you're on the money with people being tired because I'm just thinking of companies like, and again, no disrespect to companies like Supabase or Firebase, whatever it may be. But
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
see a Supabase or a Sentry ad, like I know the product exists. I
yeah.
know what it
We're
does.
there. We got
I
it.
don't
We
I
got it.
don't need it. I don't need it right now. What I would double click on is if you show me like a day in the life of David Kramer who founded Sentry. You
That
know,
would be
I would
fascinating. Yeah, I'd watch that
right.
too.
Exactly. And so you're still getting the Sentry message across, but you're not selling. You're just showing a human thing. I think that's a huge takeaway for anyone here. I think there's an application here for people applying for jobs, even because companies probably don't like receiving resumes, like en masse. And so if you can find a way to humanize that, that's probably going to work in your favor.
That's it.
Awesome, man. I want to talk to you about the how engineers can actually get good jobs. This I feel like this. So there's engineers, as you mentioned, they're their own tribe. We speak somewhat of a different language and so on. And oftentimes, when it comes to the job search, your network is your net worth. I've gotten so many DMs, Taylor, especially during the bad economy season. I've gotten so many DMs by people. Hey, Tejas, is DataStax hiring? Hey, Tejas, do you know any leads? Hey, Tejas, can you help me? And in my position, this is not. It's definitely orders of magnitude harder for the people without jobs, but for me it's difficult as well because I want to help, but I don't know how. I don't know what to tell them. Like DataStax is not hiring currently for DevRel, and I don't know any available positions, and so it hurts me to have to say I have no idea. I'm sorry. What's your advice for people who want to get a job and maybe don't know how because they just got laid off or something?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now the act of cold applying it just doesn't work. Now we may have some listeners who are like, well, I found my job. I always get one. I found my job cold applying. I'm like, great, congratulations, right? I'm not saying it's like you're never going to get it, but it's really hard, right? I mean, I'm really good friends with Kelly Vaughn, and she and I text all the time, and about hiring, and she gets like 600-700 applicants for one job.
Wow.
Right. Like, and so like, if you're not, and then what people don't understand in the engineering community and just in general, that depending on how the hiring manager recruiter sorts your resume, which is why I actually was consulting for a AI company that basically like used AI to like bubble up your resume based off parameters to the top, but it's all time stamped. So like you could be the first person in. You could have all the alerts set up, but if the recruiter or hiring manager decides to sort the last one in, yours is never going to get seen.
Wow.
And people don't understand that. So that's why I'm saying like applying isn't good. I think I've talked with a lot of engineering leaders. A lot of them have said like sending a quick DM after applying, telling them why you're a fit does really well. So if you go to LinkedIn, a lot of times you can see who published the job posting. Now, a lot of times it could be a recruiter, but sometimes it's an engineering leader. And so what I've talked with a few engineering leaders as well that are on the job search, they've had great success messaging that person and being like, hey, saw you have a job posting. Here are 3 reasons why, based off the job description, I'm a really good fit. Would love to have a chat. Bang, 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 bang. Right. And so, so that being said, that is what I would recommend. Also, just like message people, right? Even if you can't help, just be like, hey, Tejas, like, if you know anybody, let me know. If not, like, it's good to chat, right? Move on. Now, here's the deal. The way it works is if Tejas sees something the next day that could be a fit for you, and be specific in the DMs. The amount of vagueness in the DMs is uncalled for.
Yeah, good.
Like, just go for the ask. Tejas, I am a senior back-end engineer that has a fair amount of Go and Rust. Targeting 175K. I'm open to work anywhere. Let me know if you know anybody. Like nobody has time. Everyone's tired. that should be the title of this podcast.
Everyone's tired and we're crazy.
Yeah. Basically, like people just don't have time to go back and forth in the DMs. If you don't get me in the DMs the first time, I'm not going to probably reply. Like I'm not going to reply the third time, if that makes sense. Like I'll reply once. And then and I don't mean to be mean, but like I'm trying to manage a team, doing podcasts, doing content. Like I ain't got time to go back and forth with you. So go for the ask immediately.
That's so good. Yeah, go for the ask immediately and be as specific as possible. So good. Fun fact, on the way to come here and record this with you, I checked my DMs and I found a DM from literally months ago from somebody who asked me to be a guest on his podcast. And I said yes, because, yes, man. And he followed it up with, okay, can we have a meeting earlier?
No.
A video. Yeah.
No.
Can we have just here's my calendar. Can we just schedule like a 15-minute chat? And guess what? I found out that I never responded to him after that for months, and I feel bad about it. But I thought about it. Yeah, I thought about it in my head. Exactly. I thought about it in my head. That's the moment he lost me, unfortunately.
And like you didn't mean anything by it.
Exactly.
You didn't mean anything by it. We're just busy. People are just busy.
Yeah. So I think that's another takeaway for listeners is never underestimate how busy someone is because
Yeah.
not everybody's going to have time to respond to your vague nonsense,
Yeah. And
unfortunately.
it's not about you. Or
Yeah.
it's not, when I say it's not about you, I mean, it's not your fault that people don't get back to you. They're either really, really busy or you were very vague in the DMs or the emails.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. We talked about you being an institution, Taylor the institution. I want to know if somebody else wants to be an institution. We've said it multiple times. Your network is your net worth. There are some people listening to this who one, their net worth is zero, and two, they're in debt because they're not nice people. And what advice do we have for them to start building up a net worth network?
I mean, I think just give back, right? One of the things that I realized early on is that so your typical recruiter rates for people typically is 10% of people you meet you place in jobs. That's not good math. Like I'm not good at math. I took pre-algebra in college. That is not good. I do know that. So out of every 100 people that I meet, I only put 10 people in jobs. So what am I doing with the other 90% of people?
Yeah, what are you doing with them?
Originally nothing.
You're wasting opportunities.
Yes, I'm wasting opportunities, right? And so what I originally thought was like, well, how can I give back to the 90% of people that I'm not helping? Job search content, right? Because what's the one thing I get asked a lot of is how to write a resume, how to write a LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And so for me, I was like, well, I just need to start putting out content to where, again, content to where anybody can see it who follows me and they'll just be like, oh, okay, this is great. I don't need to talk to Taylor. I can just read his content and I can level up my job search. And so for me, like if you are, and then I get a lot of pushback on juniors. They're like, well, what's valuable content? Valuable content from a junior perspective is your journey into tech because that's what everybody else is dealing with too. And also, what you perceive as value or not valuable could be insanely valuable to the next person. Like I haven't told anybody this. One thing I'm really challenging myself is I started to get in my head with content recently. Oh, it's not the right time. Oh, it's not pretty enough picture. Oh, it's not this. Right now, I'm just gonna post it, man. Like I don't care if it's 9 p.m. at night. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. in the morning. If I'm posting at 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm probably kidnapped, FYI, because I should be in REM sleep at that point. But like for me, like that is I even get in my own head, and because what I realize is what's valuable to me or what's not valuable to me could be valuable to somebody else. And so if you're a junior in your career, just document your journey. What are you learning? Who are you meeting? Who can you make introductions for, right? Post about it. Like talk about it. I would go live. If I was a junior developer, I would go live every day on LinkedIn for 15 minutes using StreamYard and just talk about what I did the day before. Hey, I did this. And that's basically what Jason Torres does. And he's built a great community around
Yeah.
it, right? Like, and then I want to shout out Dominic, Monaco as well. I believe that's his last name. He posts on his LinkedIn all the time just, hey, today I chatted with so-and-so at a coffee chat. Here are the 3 things we talked about. If you want to connect with that person, go connect with that person. It's brilliant. Just documenting conversations, right? So, and then if you're senior, man, you have the opportunity to teach, to give back. Hey, I'm diving into the latest version of blah, 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 right? Would love to, here's what I'm learning about blah, 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 right? That's how it sounds in my head with all y'all's tech jargon. So it's like,
That's exactly what we say too.
It's like Snoopy, right? In Linus. So like document it, right? Post about it, right? Give back to people. And I think if you can do that, I told people this at the Black Men in Tech conference I spoke at, because we kind of navigated into the job search conversation. I said, I think everybody's 90 consecutive LinkedIn job postings away from something amazing happening in their career.
Wow. Wow. That's so great. So it sounds like that it starts with motivation, and the motivation has to be, I want to give. Look, I have to these people who are maybe in debt with the net worth, they may even feel like I have nothing to give. And what you're saying is that's just not true. Everybody has something to give. You could literally just give, hey, here's what I ate for lunch. I feel good. And so what I'm hearing is there needs to be the mindset and the motivation to give and then give. And give through content, give through community, give however, but like you said, 90 LinkedIn video posts. I love that. That's a great, easy formula that anybody can replicate. I think it was Mr. Beast, right, who said, if you're a content creator and you're struggling to like get traction, he's like, don't even talk to me unless you've made 100 videos. Because he's like, your first 100 videos are just going to be you learning rapidly, like extremely
Yep.
rapidly, iterating, changing something every time. And at the end, by your 101st, you're probably got it. You've got it dialed in and you've got a good audience. So thank you. That is so great. So if somebody wants to build their net worth network, that's the way. Want to give and then give.
Yeah, I mean, to put in perspective, so daily vlog 357. I think daily vlog 320. I finally liked my daily vlog, and then
Wow.
I stopped. I only did my daily vlog for 37 days approximately, because I finally dialed in 27 tries, which actually was more like 500
Wow.
something tries. I finally got it to where I was like, okay, this doesn't suck in my mind. But here's the thing. Everybody else loved it. Anytime I meet you, Tejas, at conferences, you always bring it up.
I
And
love
that
it.
means so much to me, right? And it's like, to me, I'm like, this it's not good. Blah, I don't like this shot. Blah. Listen, we are always our own worst enemy. And one of the biggest hacks I can tell people is go speak, go act a fool, like go just be authentically you in public. And I love what you said too. Like you're going to do your job, whether it's here or something else. And that came up actually at Black Men in Tech this weekend about like being unapologetically you, doing your job. Like, and if a company doesn't take you for who you are, you're still going to do that job somewhere else. I'm always going to do this. I'm always going to build community. I'm always going to raise awareness, build brand loyalty wherever I go, whether it's at Torque or whatever. I'm grateful that it's with Torque, but I'm still going to do it because this is who I am, right? And I think I got to this point because I stayed authentically true to myself when everybody else in the entire system told me, Taylor, you should just recruit. Just
Yeah.
stay a recruiter. What are you doing? What is this I mean, dude, the amount of backdoor whispers that got back to me when I started this was wild. Was wild. And I mean, I've had haters along the way. I've had all along the way, and I'm so thankful. And I'll say this story too, is that my for the last 2.5 years, I've taken a huge pay cut. It's been 40% down year over year
Wow.
because when I was in the recruiting industry, my focus was software engineers. Well, guess what was hit in the last 2 years? Software engineering,
Right.
right? So I was having a conversation with my wife recently. It was before Torque, and she was like, and she didn't mean this mean at all. It was just conversation, and we're just being very vulnerable and transparent with each other, which is what I love about her. And um, she was like, I don't mean to be mean. She was like, I mean, financially, like we just haven't been back to where we were ever since you started this social media thing. And I was like, I just kind of sat there. I was like, yeah, I know. And like that was pretty much it. Like it was obviously. I mean, if you listen, it's, damn, that sounds awful, but it wasn't that bad. Like in the moment, we were just talking about finances, and then like for the next week, I was like, should I just give it up? Should I just give up everything I'm doing? And this was like 3 months ago, 4 months ago. It's like, should I just give up everything I'm doing? Should I just go back to being a recruiter? I'm good at it. I was great at it. Top three, four in my entire company. I had like 200 recruiters. I was great at it. But so I messaged some people. I messaged, Kelly Vaughn, who we talk all the time. I was like, should I do it? She goes, don't. She goes, don't. She goes, you will lose the entire engineering community. I said, all right. And then now with this opportunity at Torque, just to be totally transparent, it's the opportunity to make the most money I've ever made in my career.
Wow.
So my advice for people is don't give up. Don't give up. Because as long as you believe it, it will happen.
A lot of people say, I'll believe it when I see it. Um, I've always lived with the philosophy of I'll see it when I believe it.
That's the whole faith. Was it faith without works is dead or whatever it
Yeah, I
is?
just like, and a lot of folks do this. Like I was talking with Josh Como, who's going to be a guest on the
Oh,
podcast at
he's
some point,
great.
and yeah, and I was talking with him about his courses. So for those who don't know, Josh makes a number of courses: the Joy of React, the Joy of CSS, and these courses sell like hotcakes. I mean, there's just an
He's so
enormous
good at
amount.
it. He's so good at it.
He's
I don't
so
even
good at
know
it.
what it is, but it's great.
And if we come back to this idea of I'll believe it when I see it, or I'll see it when I believe it, Josh tells his process is he sets a date for when it's going to sell. before anything else, and he's like, okay, that's the date. I'm going to ship it. You know, and that almost works as a forcing function to pressure him to ship on that date.
Sure.
Yeah. Also, just coming back to this idea of if you want to grow your network net worth, and you mentioned give 99 times and take the 100th time. This is also scientific. You talk about your health and your REM sleep, so I assume you're a person of science. There's
Yeah.
a paper published in 2017 in Nature, which is an excellent journal, Nature Communications. It's titled "A Neural Link Between Generosity and Happiness" by Park and colleagues, and it's really cool because they had two groups, an experimental group and a control group, and they were both given money. And the experiment group was told, take this money and spend it on other people. And the control group was told, take this money and spend it on yourself. And they used functional MRI to look at what's happening in their brains. And also, there's like self report surveys. And what they found was that the experimental group, meaning the one who spent money on others, later in life also continued to show more generous choices. But above and beyond that, they self reported just feeling way happier, and their brains work different than the selfish folks. And so, Taylor, you're this institution, you've got this network and so on. But I think it's because, again, it comes back to being sensitive and giving. Your brain just develops fundamentally differently than those who take. And I think that's such a profound observation. And so, like you said, don't give up. It's not too late. The brain's highly plastic, and indeed, if you've been taking your entire life and seeing no success, maybe that's why. Right? Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I mean, I think I saw some clip. It's just that like we as humans like are not supposed to spend through life alone, and we're also not. We're also built to help others. Like we inherently are built to be in community and help others. And I think for me there are so I'll tell a story. I you should shout out to my mom. She made me and my brother volunteer at a nursing home in high school and in middle school. And I tell you what, I think a lot of my social skills came from that because when
Wow.
you learn how to talk to somebody who potentially is almost on their deathbed, you develop a sort of sensitivity that you typically don't get in the real world. And for me, I think it puts a ton of things into focus. And I think putting yourself, I hated it. I hated it. It was so uncomfortable. It's hot. Keep nursing home so hot because everyone's cold, right? Like, and it smelled, right? And like I didn't enjoy it. Like it was never something I wanted to go do. But man, how I felt afterwards, like when I moved on to college, my mom continued to volunteer there. There were women that I spoke to like 5, 6 years ago that still remembered me and still
Wow.
ask about me. And it's one of these things where when you can when you can posture your heart in a sense to give back consistently, like you are going to be more aware of a lot of things that you have never been introduced to and aware of before because that position of your heart changes. And then you're like, oh, well, how did I come across the Tages here? Or, oh, hey, how did I? Because listen, at the end of the day, man, like being in a developer community, like you got to be kind and there's an inclusivity that it needs to occur. And I found that the people who are doing the most giving back and have that heart posture are usually the ones that are the most inclusive and the most kind, right? And so again, I just think giving back is the root of it. And I mean, shoot, even while we're talking, I'm like, well, I need to probably do this. Probably need to do this to give back to this person.
Yeah.
Even as we're talking, like my brain's going, and it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's uncomfortable. But I also think what I've realized, though, I think I'm going through a midlife crisis. I'm realizing a lot of things lately. But one of the things is that, man, the more difficult situations you can get into, that's where the most growth happens.
Totally. One of my best friends has this really great saying. I keep going back to it. It's so good. His name's David Schnitter. And like the first time he introduced himself to me, he's like, "Hi, my name's Dave Schnitter. Don't drop the N." And he says this thing because I was going through a tough season one time, and he looked at me and he was like, "Look, man, everybody's chasing this like Instagram mountaintop experience with the spectacular view, and the top of the mountain's a beautiful place." But he's like, if you ever notice, it's usually everything's dead up there, and real life happens in the valleys.
So good.
Yeah. And I
That
was
that'll
like, that.
preach. That'll preach, as they say. Well, and I think it's good. I mean, I had one guy message me. I know him. He is a recruiter, kind of more on the corporate side instead of the agency side. And he just texted me out of the blue the other day, and he was like, "Man, I just want to let you know that like, you know, everything seems to be going really well. Like you have your life together." And of course, like me, I'm like at the time I was like, again, like finances have been tough. Like, I haven't been taking my care of myself physically because of, our newborn, right? Like there's just been like, to me, it feels like I'm struggling and I'm not doing what I need to be doing. But then on the outside, people think it's great. And so I just, and I think one of the things my wife and I've kind of been in this season lately of being very appreciative of what we have and being very present and not looking ahead. I think we as human beings always look ahead. And I think being very grounded in what you have currently, I think is incredibly important. And then also, what is happiness? Yes, financially, money can buy happiness to a certain point, right? Like with this job, it's given me it's lifted off a financial burden. I understand that. But like I was like I said, I was in Florida this week and I was in a hotel and I was watching a YouTube video of something and like it was like, all right, well you have the VP title now. You have the money. Now what? And you know what the answer was? Give back. Give back. Right? And like I said, you can always climb you can only climb so many titles. There's only so many titles. There's literally actually only so many titles. Financially, yeah, you can do side hustles and invest, but at the end of the day, financially, everybody gets paid kind of the same for the most part at a national level, right? Give or take, depending on regions and stuff like that. So then what, right? And I think again, like to me, it's like, man, I finally got people would say I've climbed the mountaintop now. I've gotten the VP, I've got the executive title. I think that VP is like executive, I think, but like you got the comp, you got the social media, you got that, and it's like for me, it's like, well, what's next? Give back.
And you're giving back through your series, your videos of like,
Yeah,
here's how the
this is
sausage is
it.
made. I love that we've come full circle through that. We've touched on a lot of things, and it's probably time to start wrapping up. But I'd be
Yeah,
remiss if I didn't ask you about one entirely different aspect that we haven't discussed,
sure.
Taylor, because you're pretty public on social media,
Yep,
talking about you just became a dad again.
yep.
This is interesting. You're this institution, Taylor the institution. How does that work with having literally a newborn? I don't know how many children you have, but
Two,
children and a wife.
two.
You
Yeah,
have horses. I've seen on your daily vlogs.
yeah.
There's all this maintenance that needs to be done. What's that like? What's that experience like having to deal with both sides? And how do you balance it?
Man, I'll try not to get choked up here. I mean, it's my wife. I mean, she's incredible. I tell her all the time, I would literally live in a cardboard box if it wasn't for her, down by the river. Um, Listen, do I do it well? Some would say I do. Do I think I do it well? No. I think I can always give back to family more and focus on family more. I love what I do, which I think comes at a cost, right? Like I'm not, and I don't mean this mean to financial people. I know a lot of people love numbers and stuff. I don't. And so like, if you had me just like doing, financial budgeting, I'd be like, I can't do this. I would shut it off as soon as I could at 5 and like never think about it until 8 the next morning, right? That's just not how I am. And so, my wife and I have talked about putting boundaries in place. I started that dads in tech group. I think you've seen me tweet about it, but it's like I have a Discord. It's like 80 dads in tech. We've had 2 meetups where we just get together monthly to talk about all things we're dealing with, and we all deal with the same things. How do you balance a career you love with kids and a wife and making sure time is there? And so, for me, I need to be better at it. I do. My wife, I don't think will listen to, an hour and a half episode, but if she does fast forward through this, Jackie, you have it on record. I'm going to be better. But I think at the end of the day, like my wife and I are a team. She handles, a lot for me. This opportunity has given me the opportunity to get more child. This opportunity has given me the financial means to get more nanny care while I'm on the road to help my wife out. Fortunately, everything's dying on the farm now because we're getting into the fall season, so it's a little bit easier. I don't have to weed eat for 4 hours on a Saturday right now, which is great. But man, it's wonderful. I'm blessed to have the family that I do. And it's just something I'm always having to be mindful. I don't think I'm ever going to be great at it. But again, it's the awareness and wanting to that will constantly drive me.
Awesome. So it's almost like feeling like a failure. You being your own worst critic is actually a good thing because it.
Yeah, and that's a scary thing, right? I mean, I know we're wrapping up, but I mean, I kind of grew up in a household to be really hard on myself as a kid. Like I was the one that used to, just always beat myself up, and I've been in counseling and to try to fix that. I'm really big on mental health and all that jazz, and so that's something I'm trying to fix. And I do have to make sure I don't beat myself up too much. Like my wife's even pulled me out sometimes of the abyss and like, hey, you're beating yourself up too much. Like it's not that bad. You just missed this thing. Like it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And so, but yeah, I try not to beat myself up too much. But I am my own worst critic. So
Yeah. Well, from what it's worth, I have exactly the same thing, and it serves me extremely well. Like my wife just says like one sentence to me about I wish we get more time together. You best believe this is gonna be fixed.
yeah,
And so
100%. I love it.
you mentioned starting a dads in tech group.
Yeah.
Is that local to Nashville? Is that going to be a globally distributed thing? How
Yeah,
does that work?
it's a globally distributed thing. We have people. I have one guy in our group from London.
Cool.
If you go to so I use Guild, which is a meetup.com alternative. So if you go to guild.host, you can search like all the meetups. It's literally just called Dads in Tech. And we've had about 55 dads show up to virtually, and we just literally the first session was like I had dads text me that they cried afterwards because of
Wow.
like how needed it was. Like we talked about like saying I'm sorry to your kids and the importance of apologizing and how to raise a kid with cell phones. And we don't mess around. I mean, we dive right into it. This past session was talking about insurance. Should I go back to work as a dad if we have the funds because I want to be home with my family? So it's some pretty meaningful stuff.
Incredible. Yeah, we'll put links to that in the show. I think that's so important. We've had a number of guests on the podcast talk about, especially founders, talk about how lonely the founder's journey is. And I have to, like, tech is mostly young people or people who are so busy in their career that they don't invest in families. And so a support group for people with families and who want families, I think is so, so welcome. And I so appreciate the work you're doing there. All right. By way of closing, let's talk
Yep.
about the future. You mentioned AI here and there. So before COVID, everything was local. There was Nashville. You were sensitive to this change with COVID. Things were now global. What is your prediction for the future of tech recruitment and community building?
I'll answer kind of twofold because I think both are nuanced. I think tech recruiting, in my opinion, is moving towards the marketplace setting. The more and more I see it. So, for me, I think I could see recruiting firms start to buy marketplaces, which happened to us. Ronstad bought us. And their long-term vision is to, I know Ronstad's based out of the Netherlands. And so their long-term, I think, is to like really really mesh platforms because what the platform does is you don't need as a recruiter you don't need to go outbound anymore to the job boards. You can just search within the databases, right? So it makes things a lot faster, but that puts more of an emphasis on a community devrel team in the marketplace because you got to bring developers in how they want to be approached, and then the matchers match them into jobs, right? So it's kind of a different type of mindset and strategy. So I think you're going to start seeing more recruiting companies buy up talent marketplaces and incorporating them into kind of their business flow. I do think you're going to start seeing DevRel as recruiters, which is what I'm going to be building at Torque. Like I'm taking the DevRel model, and instead of developers, they're going to be recruiters like myself, and we're going to be out there and we're just going to be giving back at scale, right? And getting people onto the platform. So I do see that happening. I think from a community perspective, I think again, I'm a big thing of these like Netflix style shows. Go hire a local content company and follow your team around. Like the videographer came up, so we just released Vlog 000, which
I
is
saw that.
basically just a my vlog talking about the position. But Vlog 001 is going to be our 3 days in Boston as a team. We're going to have a lot of behind the scenes of what my CEO is saying, CTO is saying. Like it's not just me. And then obviously documenting the travels and whatnot. So I do think from a community content perspective, I think every company needs kind of a behind the scenes look. I think every company needs a show. Like I'm going to be starting to stream Guidance Counselor 2.0 on the Torque platform now, the Torque LinkedIn. I think every company needs some sort of weekly, daily show from a content machine perspective. And I think too, I think the more you can get away from professional talk, I think the faster you're going to grow community. So that's something I'm going to think of, like what can we do on the Torque Discord that's not work, but like, just be in community with others. So I think that's just off the cuff kind of where community and recruiting is heading.
I Awesome. Thank you. I think you're on the money. You mentioned DevRel as recruiters, or recruiters as DevRel. Does
Yeah,
this mean you and your team are just going to go to conferences then, where engineers hang out and just be in the crowd and get
that's
lunch with
it.
them, rub shoulders, and talk? Okay,
That's it.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
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 cool.
so I think. Oh, also too, I think we're going to continue to see marketing departments getting laid off.
Uh
I
oh,
think. I think.
I'm
Yeah.
in a marketing department.
Well, you know what I mean. Traditional marketing,
Right.
and it's going to be all more towards content marketing, right? I think traditional market. I think there is I think there is a need for drip marketing, email campaigns. I think there's a reason for ads. I think you're going to have that. But I think outside of maybe, I think they're going to have very thin marketing department, like traditional marketing people, like one or two people, and then you're going to build out a video team, a copywriting team, or a social team. Like I think the content team is going to be bigger and bigger. But going back to your DevRel, yeah, it worked for me, so why not duplicate it out at scale?
That's so cool. So there's just going to be like many Taylor
Mini Taylors,
Dessons.
yeah, 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 all bleached blonde
Whoa.
hair and tattoos and earrings.
Incredible. Well, listen, Taylor, I know it's a big deal to come on the show like this and spend so much time talking about all of this in detail. One thing I really genuinely appreciate is you have these moments where, like, sometimes when you talk, it's like a mic drop moment. It's like oof. And you do this. I've noticed you do this thing where you pause for emphasis, and I think that's so cool. So with that said, I mean, you've given us an enormous amount of information. I mean, from what Torque does, your work there, but also talking about the positives of being sensitive, how being sensitive not just to people but to market is really the secret sauce, and how it all starts with giving, and taking strategically. I think that's so valuable. We also talked about job trends, hiring, and also what was it? Family life. My
Yeah,
goodness, there's an enormous amount of information here, and the cool thing is, all of this is fully searchable on tage.as/podcast. And the cool, like, people just type in like, how do I balance family life, and your episode's going to come up right there.
it's
So
really cool.
on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much, man. It's been so good chatting with you and getting to know you better, and also sharing all your insights with the audience.
Likewise, my friend. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Taylor Desseyn. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope this idea that your network is your net worth really resonates, and I hope you've received some actionable takeaways to go build a great network. And I don't mean network where it's like a network of assets and people you can use, but a network of truly great human relationships where you enjoy the other party, they enjoy you, and it's just like, I'll help you, not feeling like I have to, if that makes sense. If you're learning from and or enjoying this content, then a great way to support it with no cost is to just hit the like button, maybe subscribe on YouTube if you're watching it there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leaving a review, any review up to 5 stars, would be super helpful, because then people discover this in their feed and the knowledge just is democratized to them. This is a labor of love, and I do it because I love people and I want people to. I don't want to keep this knowledge that I get from people like Taylor like exclusive to me. I think good knowledge and information ought to be democratized and free to everybody. So if you want to join that mission, then sharing this on any social media would be a great help. For now, thanks so much for joining this episode. Thank you for your interest in engineering, and thank you for being a part of this podcast.